Hey everyone, Seth at Hub City Vintage, and if you're already thinking, great, another 6139 video, well, you'd only be partially right. The thing is, I've always been fascinated by just how quickly Seiko got here from here in just a few short years. History tells us that post-World War II Japan was a nation eager to get things moving again and reestablish their economic and industrial prosperity, and Seiko had certainly bought into that culture, and I can only imagine that it must have been an exciting company to be a part of with so much innovation taking place, and that's really why I started this video with the Pogue. You know, I've read that Seiko really only started developing the 6139 in earnest in about 1967. Of course, it was only 2 years later in 69 that they would arguably cross the finish line first. They crossed the finish line first in bringing to market the world's first automatic chronograph. And remember, they were going up against the likes of Project 99, aka Cal 11, which included Breitling, Hoyer, Hamilton, and Buren, as well as Zenith and the El Primero. But the most interesting part to me really is just how vastly different the 6139 is from its immediate predecessor. If we turn the clock back just a few years to 1964, a year that really might be one of Seiko's biggest, I mean, they had secured the position of official timekeeper for the Olympics, which of course were held in Tokyo. And for the games alone, Seiko had produced almost 1,300 timing devices, including the first quartz-regulated device. And for the public, they had the World Time, brand new World Time with the Olympic torch on the case back, as well as Japan's very first chronograph wristwatch, the 5719 one-button chrono. There were three variants: the 5719 no date, the 5717 here, which added the date, and maybe the grailiest Seiko going, the 5718, which was produced in very limited quantities and was actually sold at the Olympic Village during the games. And that one had a shared elapsed minute and running seconds register at 6, and then up above the hands and in between the badging was a counter window, which actually you could use for points or golf strokes or laps. But that one is really, that's a video all unto itself. So I'm going to try to stop talking about that one here. Just let it go. Taking a closer look at this 5717, this one happens to be an Asian Games variant, as Seiko followed up the Tokyo Games timekeeping job with getting chosen to do the Asian Games in Bangkok in '66. Why not tout that achievement on a case back as well, even a couple of years prior? But turning the watch back over, you can see, as I mentioned, this is the date model. Let's move those hands a bit and make sure that we're in a safe place for operating the quick set. So in the crown in the second position, we can easily roll through the date, and I believe this one can go backwards as well. Yep, that wheel rolls either way. Of course, in the first position is our manual wind and timekeeping in the third crown position. We have the one button, as I mentioned here, and you can see the second hand is rolling around the dial right now. We can, of course, stop it with that same button, and a second press will send it right back to 0. Now, so as this watch is only capable of, the chronograph can only count 60 seconds at a time, the bezel acts as a workaround. I have not done anything to this watch yet, so the bezel is a bit tight, and I will try to move it for you to show you. The idea was that prior to starting the chronograph, let's go ahead and stop it, get it back to 0. You would rotate the bezel so that the cursor is directly opposite the minute hand, and of course start the chronograph. In any event that you're timing, every revolution that the sweep hand makes, of course the minute hand is going to move by 1, and so you would just total the minutes up to 60, and of course your seconds you can start and stop and reset at will. But pretty clever workaround, and not a bad looking watch either. Let's compare it to the 6139. I'll never forget the first time I opened an OBC, and I was like, whoa, this is really a very Swiss looking movement. You know, if at first glance it doesn't have that Seiko DNA that we're used to. And this watch is also commonly called the Crown chronograph, as it was built on the same 57 platform as the Crown and Marvel and Lord Marvel models. The chrono mechanism itself functions like and is often compared to the Omega chronostop, which I actually have most of one here. So this is the driver model. This watch would have actually been worn. You can see how it's strapped on the wrist like this. And that's so if you're holding a steering wheel, you can start and stop and reset this counter, the 60-second counter chronograph, and it's still in your field of vision with your hand on a steering wheel. It still looks to you in the correct orientation. Really, just a neat watch. I've had this one for quite a while, but in fact, if anyone is sitting on a balance complete for one of these, give me a shout below. Maybe we can work something out. Let's take this case back off here and take a look at these two side by side. All right, now that they're similarly oriented, you can see they are really not all that different. There's horizontal coupling, which I don't think we see in any other Seiko chronograph, and that's just like the chrono runners on Omegas here. A horizontal clutch, and in fact, really the only major difference is that Seiko's is actuated with a column wheel versus Omega's cam. But they really are, because they do the same thing. It's sort of a start, stop, and reset with the same button. The design, you can definitely see there's Seiko may have taken some inspiration here, and I can see why people would make that comparison. The 6139, it famously uses and I've removed the auto winding portion of this watch so you could get a closer look here. This is the chrono bridge versus this is the chrono bridge here. It's a much larger design here, and you can see it's incorporated with the reset hammer here, that spring. But you can see it uses a vertical clutch. There's a clutch lever on either side of the chrono wheel there, and of course it also uses the column wheel like the 5717. One of the larger differences is that the 5717 is a modular chronograph, meaning that the chronograph module is stacked right on top of the timekeeping portion. The 6139, though it might share its base design with other 61 series movements, the chronograph is actually integrated into this movement so that it's all sort of one piece is probably the wrong word, but it's all just one solid movement. It's not a timekeeping module and a chronograph module sandwiched on top of each other. It's all built into one cohesive design. So we have modular versus integrated. And of course, if you wanted to add a self-winding mechanism to this watch as well, it would really just make it way too thick and would probably wear more like a soup can on the wrist. And that's really why Buren was brought into the Project 99 fold as the Cal 11. That's also a modular design. And Buren's micro rotor was really the only feasible solution to keeping height in check for that watch. Of course, we know that Seiko would later add manual winding and a 12-hour register, an independent quick set of the day and date with the introduction of the 6138 in 71. But by the end of the decade, mechanical chronos were really on the way out in favor of another Seiko milestone that was also achieved in 1969, the Seiko Astron, and of course the Quartz Revolution / Crisis. But whatever your feelings about that, I'm pretty glad that we have great examples of both of these amazing and very different vintage Seiko chronographs floating around, and no matter your preference, both are the right choice in my book. And I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe, and consider joining our Patreon community where $7 gets you exclusive content, comprehensive looks at all of our inventory as it arrives, and we've even been known to do a giveaway there. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.